20
Well, it's
years. How
lovely
does
to
that
be.
feel?
Well, you know, I think somebody said to me the other day, 20 years was halfway through the journey of this band. And in some ways, you know, that was 20 years ago. We've had another 20 years since. Who would have thought when we put out our boy record, which I think also has an anniversary this year,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we would be talking about a record like this 20 years into our career, or even 40 years. It's been a wonderful journey.
This is an album. When I heard that it was 20 years, I was one of those people that was going to myself, how can this be 20 years old? Because I only remember listening to this about 5 years ago in my turquoise Fiat Cinquecento, crying to the lyrics of Walk On because I just broke up with somebody. And then actually I realized, Jesus, it was 20 years ago. The songs bring you back on this album. So do they bring you back to a good time in your life 20 years ago? How do you feel about it?
Uh, you know, I think it was a time for both me and the band where it was sort of, okay, let's get serious now. Let's get serious about where we're going here. I think you two had the Joshua Tree. We'd had a big kind of stadium tour. We'd had Achtung Baby. We'd had a big Zoo TV tour. And this time it was like, let's get intimate. Let's get into a small space and let's really focus on writing songs that actually kind of mean something to us. And I think that's what we have here. We have an amazing collection of songs. I mean, every song in some ways represents something that was going on at the time. I'm particularly drawn to Kite at the moment because when Bono was writing that lyric, he was talking about his own children. And I now have children. I'm a bit of a late starter. I've been practicing for a while. But I now have two kids. And when I listen to Kite, it takes me right back to that time and what he was writing about. And also, I think what made the song more complex for Bono was he was also addressing, you know, his father's illness, and his father was, you know, he didn't know how long he had left. So it has a duality of his relationship with his father defining his relationship with his children. And my father is the only surviving father of the U2 family at this point. So I really do feel like I've gone back 20 years. That's a
Wow.
very long answer, but I think you get the gist of it.
I do. And I remember actually in Slane, I think it was Bono dedicated Kite to his dad because it was only about a week or so before that he passed. But Kite wasn't a single. Sure it wasn't.
It wasn't a single, and it's one of those songs like Bad, like Moment of Surrender, which are these big awkward songs, but people love them. You know, they're not singles, but they really lodge in people's imagination, and they become a soundtrack to their lives.
Yeah, there's a beautiful line and it says, life should be fragrant, rooftop to the basement. So that's a good line.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good, isn't it?
yeah.
That
That's good.
life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
The album, as you said there when you're just talking about Kite, Beautiful Day, Stuck in a Moment, Walk On, like they're songs about being kind of, yeah, stuck in a moment. They're songs about not particularly having a good time, but they're also songs of hope. Would you agree?
I'd agree that, you know, particularly Beautiful Day is, you know, it really is a celebration of life and about hope. And of course, you know, like everything you too, there's a little bit of a dark underbelly to it. But I mean, I think when you go into that middle age of see the tuna fleets clearing the sea out, which again is one of those great lines, it's Bono imagining looking down at the earth from a space capsule or whatever, and actually just seeing the world and seeing, you know, what's going wrong with it in a way, and we're now living that now. I mean, 20 years later, climate change is a real thing, and it's going to affect our lives and our children's lives. Stuck in a Moment. I mean, I think most people know this is about our friend Michael Hutchence, a singer in Excess.
Mm.
And he was someone that we always used to see in the summers. And I suppose it can happen to anyone. You know, one small mistake and his life started to veer off in a direction that was somewhat out of control. And I don't think any of us realized how alone and how vulnerable he was. And of course, unfortunately, I mean, nobody really knows what happened, but he lost his life right before an NXS tour. And as fellow musicians and minstrels and performers, that cut very deep in us. And I suppose it made us feel very grateful that in our band, it really is the four of us that kind of look after each other and look out for each other.
Yeah. That must have been such a sobering moment. Exactly. As you said, you're living this rock and roll lifestyle, and that happens to a friend of yours who lives a lifestyle like you as well, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it underlined is that very often you just don't know what's happening in people's lives. And, if there is anyone listening to this going through something similar, and I know these times are very, very difficult, if you can reach out to someone, tell them what's going on. If you can phone someone and just not go through it on your own, there are people ready to help.
You're always so vocal about that. I've seen you in interviews, and I've seen you, on podcasts, and the work that you do with Pieta. When was that moment for you where you decided to reach out and ask for help, or did someone just have to point you in the right direction yourself?
In my case, because I was very stubborn and very obstinate, it took me a long time to get to that point. And I was also very lucky because if you're a musician, you tend to work nights, so you don't have to get up early in the morning and hold down a day job. So it took me a long time to realize really what a mess I'd made. And then eventually when the penny did drop, I just was fed up of making excuses to myself and other people. And I had to face that actually, instead of thinking that drinking was the thing that got me through life, it was actually the thing that was holding me back. Whatever your compulsive behavior is, that it's no longer your friend, that it's no longer comforting you, and it's actually causing the problem, then you're ready to deal with it. And I was lucky. I was, going off and dealing with something like that is always hard. And sometimes people can't afford to do it, both time-wise and financially. But I was able to go off and do it. And I knew that I was doing something for myself to make my life better and to make me better. And I'm very happy I did it. And I'm really glad I've got to put that behind me.
So then this record then, when you think back at it 20 years ago, was a new departure for you.
It was a new departure. It was the first time I think I'd recorded a record completely stone cold sober. So to a degree, I was white knuckling it. And of course, the hours were very different then. I mean, we used to work very late at night, and if you're recently sober, you don't like staying up at night. But it was a wonderful record to be a part of. And of course, the songs really do mean something coming from that period of my life. And I guess particularly in the light of Michael Hutchinson's story, I really feel like I was one of the lucky ones.
Great. 20 years on, here we are. Is this probably the first time in your whole career that you don't have to be anywhere, that you just have no schedule for the past couple of months? How does it feel?
Well, it feels like, when you used to go to school and it would snow and you wouldn't be able to go to school for a couple of days. So it feels a bit like that, except it's gone on for a year. And I mean, it's sad not to be able to perform. It's sad not to really know what the future is. But a lot of people are in that situation. It's given me an opportunity to stay home, which is not something I've done for, forever. I've never even thought about it. I've always been a wandering minstrel, willing to pack a bag and jump on a plane. And now I'm in one place, and actually I quite like it.
So you're probably spending so much time with your kids, and like your youngest kid is what, 3? Your daughter is 3.
Yeah.
So like, are you playing her your tunes, or is she just all about Baby Shark? Like, does she know? Does she see you on TV? Does she have any idea?
She has an idea, but obviously it it doesn't really mean very much. But, music's a part of our lives. She loves reading, which is great. So there's not too much TV. So we read a lot of books together. And she kind of likes dancing the Nutcracker.
She...
so we tend to listen to the Nutcracker a lot.
Oh, fab. That sounds so cute. And you dancing around with her, obviously, as well, because that's what dads have to do.
I look great in a tutu.
I'm sure. So obviously you guys haven't been together, or maybe you have been working together. Is it Zoom chats? Is it WhatsApp calls? Is there a new album in the making in this time of no traveling? And what's going on with you two? Any things on the way?
Well, Edge it's very hard to get Edge to put his guitar down. So he's always working on a tune. Bono, as you know, is he's always kind of going around the world trying to sort out any particular issues that are happening, and I think he's still doing that. But we have a record that we've started. It probably would take maybe a month or 6 weeks to finish it up. And until we know what's happening, until we know what the future holds and we can go out and tour those songs, we have no plans at the moment. It's very hard to plan anything.
I know. You are a touring, jobbing band. Like, you're always on the road. Do you miss it right now? Or are you enjoying this moment? Like, obviously you're spending time with your daughter, but is there an innate kind of, it's in your nature now. Is it weird for you?
It is weird. And what's weird is it's like we're going to miss a cycle. We're going to miss a year or two. And
because you're due a tour, because I know this, because I know you're due one.
Yeah. So, I think, missing that communion and meeting people and going around the world is something that, I'm very maudlin about in some ways. But actually, perhaps it makes people go back to the records in a different way. I think I've gone back to music in a different way. I've been listening to the records of my youth a lot more. I've been listening to things like Patti Smith from when I was 16 and 17 and just going back. I confess I've been reading music biographies.
Of who?
I read, let me see, Elton John, Elvis Costello. I read the Madness book, which was kind of interesting as well. Debbie Harry. All because, I remember New York in the 80s, and these are all music books based there. I've been reading the Chris Franz book on Talking Heads. So, I'm kind of immersed in the culture.
Would you do one yourself?
I don't know. I mean, it's quite a big commitment. I'd need a lot of time ahead of me because it's very hard for me to make a mark on paper. But maybe, never say never.
Audiobooks, that's it. Just speak into a microphone, you'd be fine. You had a big birthday this year, and so did Bono. So was there supposed to be big celebrations, and how did you do? What did you do? Did you do anything to celebrate it, or do you care?
I don't care now. What I think about these big birthdays, and might as well say its name, it was the 60th, is that it's much more important to the person who's about to turn 60 than it is to anyone else.
Yeah.
So my birthday is on the 13th of March, and that was really around the time that lockdown was happening, and I was going to have, a small lunch with very, very good friends, and then of course started to notice what was happening in northern Italy, and I realized, I had to cancel it. I wasn't that sad about canceling it. There's plenty of other birthdays left as far as I'm concerned.
Did you have a Skype call or a Zoom chat then with Bono on his 60th?
I think we're just so surprised to be having our 60th birthdays. When we got together at 16 and 17, there was no way we were imagining being 60. But I'm very glad we've made that benchmark, and I think it really is just a number. I feel exactly the same way. In fact, I feel a little bit like I've been conned because, You know, I grew up thinking being a teenager and a 20-year-old was like as good as it got, and it was all downhill after that. Not at all. I think it just gets better and better.
And what about
You know,
being a dad, like so late? Well, late in societal normal terms. How do you feel? Is it a good time? Are you glad you did it this way? It's because obviously you've got all the experience and all the stories to tell your kids.
yeah, I mean, my only regret is that I didn't do it earlier because it's much more fun than I could ever have imagined. You know, I feel like I went dad to granddad just a bit too fast. You know, she's a 3-year-old. I wish I had my energy when I was 30 or 40, but you know, it's great. I mean, it just informs my life every day, and that living in the moment, which I was never very good at, is just a reminder that actually nothing else matters, you know, except
Fab.
the here and now.
It's a great leveler,
Yeah.
absolutely. Adam, listen, we are going to celebrate this album today here on 2FM. U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind out today. It's the 20th anniversary remaster on all formats as well. Thank you so much for talking me through the songs. And as always, being so vocal about people getting help, reaching out, talking to people. You're such a great advocate for that. So nice one for that as well.
Thank you so much, Tracy. You take
And
care.
hopefully very, very soon you'll be back on the road and we can all get to dance again. Big stadiums like Croke Park, or maybe even do a sleighing again, because maybe that's what the country needs. You never know.
Maybe.
It would be great. Listen, Adam, have a lovely day and thank you so much for chatting to me today.